Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Donnacha Bachóin. I'm a professor at the School of Law and Government. And on behalf of this university, I would like to welcome you all to today's historic event. Before we begin, a word on health and safety. In the unlikely event that an emergency evacuation of the building is required, I would ask you to please note the emergency exit nearest to you, bearing in mind that it may be behind you. In the event of an evacuation, please remain calm and comply with the instructions of the stewards and assemble at the assembly point in front of the helix. I would also ask everyone to check now that all mobile phones are switched off. Let me briefly outline the format of today's event. We will first hear from the President of DCU, Professor Dara Keogh, followed by the Minister for Higher Education, Simon Harris, TD. I will then return to speak before introducing President Zelensky. President Zelensky will address us for approximately 10 minutes. There will then be a Q&A section during which students will put questions to President Zelensky. I will then invite the Ambassador of Ukraine to Ireland, Larissa Harasko, to address us before bringing the event to a formal close. So we have a tight schedule. So without further ado, let us proceed. I would like to invite our President of Dublin City University, Professor Dara Keogh, to speak.
Ultron Zelensky, Ambassador, Ara, Gina Usla, Scalora, agus Dini Galer, Bawatlam Fear Falcha, Queer Roiv, Quigan Okade Specialta Shaw Helix in you. President Zelensky, Ambassador, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, students, I'm really delighted to welcome you today to this historic event at Dublin City University. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everybody who's joining us and following this live stream in institutions, higher education institutions across the land. At the outset, I'd like to thank our friend, the Ambassador of Ukraine, for initiating this engagement with President Zelensky. Our special thanks and our warm welcome also to our Minister and his officials from the Department of Further Higher Education and Research, and of course our colleagues from Ivy House for their assistance. At the outset, and we need to state this boldly, that I would like to reaffirm DCU's unequivocal condemnation of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine and the barbarity, the death and the destruction which their armies have inflicted on their people. Ukraine and Ireland may be at opposite sides of the European continent, but our histories follow similar paths. We have both known famine. We have both known the consequences and the impact of prolonged occupation by a more powerful neighbour. But despite all of this, we have emerged as proud and confident nations with our own unique identity and cultures. Over a century ago, the Irish patriot Charles Stuart Parnell famously said that no man has the right to fix the boundary to the march of a nation. And in launching his brutal invasion, the Russian president falsely believed he could crush Ukraine, not just its sovereignty, but its nationhood. Not just its nationhood, but its precious self-identity. But what he has encountered is the determination of the brave Ukrainian people to defend that flame of freedom and their self-identity. So today, as we gathered in the Helix and in colleges across the island, we are gathered to express our unwavering solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We also, and sadly, extend our heartfelt condolences to those who have lost loved ones, to friends and colleagues who have lost their homes, and to people who have lost their livelihoods in this brutal war. In a world that's poisoned by pernicious evils of populism and increasing polarizations, universities like ours have a unique responsibility as bulwarks of democracy and defenders of peace and human rights. This is not just an instinct of ours, but this is an imperative. This is a duty of the university sector. And today, on behalf of our university and the wider Irish higher education sector, and in the presence of our government minister, Mr. Harris, I'd like to send a particular message of solidarity to Ukraine's universities and higher education institutions, to their suffering students and their staffs. I hope that we will see a time in the near future when Ukraine's academy and students can pursue their studies in peace without the fear of war, death and oppression. It's significant, I think, to note that Ireland's higher education sector has done its bit and made its small but significant contribution in this terrible struggle, that our universities have afforded a welcome to Ukrainian refugees who have fled their homeland. Families have been welcomed into university accommodation, and around 500 Ukrainian students have enrolled in third-level programmes across Ireland. And I understand that 100 Ukrainian higher education researchers are now registered within Ireland. And meanwhile, at DCU, we are especially proud of the academic contribution, the purpose of the university in many ways, the academic contribution of our staff. And I'd like especially to single out Professor Donegal Bakon, who was our host today, and of course our Ukrainian colleague, Dr. Tanya Lockett. They have shared their insights widely, both nationally and internationally, in the media. They have explained the political context and the development and evolution of this brutal war. The Irish poet W.B. Yeats is often quoted as describing education as the lighting of a fire. And higher education is about more than that. It's about developing the whole person. It's about igniting passions in the heart. It's about nurturing virtues, and it's about imparting values. It's about sharing and promoting our vision for a better world, not as it was, but as it should be, and as it could be with our cooperation. But sometimes values on their own are not enough. The American writer Maya Angelou famously said that courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. From the outset of this brutal campaign, President Zelensky and his people have been consistent and unwavering in their courage, in their refusal to surrender the values of democracy and human freedoms. And like Theobald Wolfe Tone, the father of Irish republicanism, President Zelensky understands that freedom must be had at all hazards. Freedom must be had at all hazards. And he's aware of the disruption, but the determination of the Ukrainian people to pursue the cause, the great cause of liberty. So today in the Helix, we join a unique opportunity for all of us to meet with President Zelensky, to better understand his values and to reaffirm Ireland's support for the Ukrainian cause. President Zelensky, we look forward to hearing from you, and we thank you for taking your time to join us today. In time, and we know that that day will come, in time we look forward to you joining us physically in this place, here in the Helix, to celebrate the victory of liberty. So without any more ado, might I welcome to the podium Minister Harris, who will make his address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Keogh, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really delighted to be here with you this afternoon. I'm honoured to be here with you this afternoon for what I think is genuinely a momentous occasion, as we virtually welcome the President of Ukraine, President Zelensky, to address us all. And I really want to thank our good friend, the Ukrainian Ambassador, Larissa, for all of your work in bringing this together. When you came to see me during the summer and said the President of Ukraine would like to speak to students in Ireland, and for working so hard to make today happen. I think it's fair to say that this is a moment of history. as President Zelensky takes time to speak to students here in Ireland, the future leaders of this country, and to speak to students here in the Helix, but also in 20 other locations right across our country today, students listening in to the President of Ukraine at this truly important time in global history. We all appreciate the time the President is taking to address us today at a time where he is tirelessly leading the fight for Ukraine's sovereignty, but not just that. At the time, he is also leading the fight to defend our democratic values, our freedoms, the concept of sovereignty, and all that we believe in right across the continent of Europe. I really want to thank DCU and President Keogh and Donica and all of the team here for working so hard to host today's event and for making sure that it is a success. Since the outbreak of this war, Ireland has been extremely united, extremely clear, and extremely consistent with our neighbours right across the EU in calling out Putin's war in Ukraine for what it is: illegal, immoral, and unjustified. Ireland supports Ukraine's sovereignty and its territorial integrity. And President Zelensky, we support you, we support Ukraine, and we support your people 100%. We also, though, are working to support the people who've had to leave Ukraine during the war. People who've had to leave overnight. People who've had to flee their homeland. People who had to leave with just the clothes on their back. And at this stage, our country has welcomed over 63,000 displaced Ukrainian citizens to the shores of this island. We've also tried to provide financial assistance bilaterally and through the EU budget, providing financial support including €20 million in humanitarian aid, €66 million to the European Peace Facility, and €3 million to the International Criminal Court. And let's be really clear about this. Whilst this country is militarily neutral, we are never, ever neutral when it comes to moral or political issues in relation to Ukraine. There is no neutrality when it comes to what's happening by Putin, this illegal, unjustified invasion of a sovereign European country. We'll never be neutral on that matter. We'll continue to support EU sanctions against Russia, and we'll continue to demand that its leaders are held accountable for their actions. And through our membership of the United Nations Security Council, we urge them to immediately end this senseless war on Ukraine. As Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, I am pleased that these sectors perhaps, have worked together to make sure that we can do our bit, that we can make sure that displaced students, researchers and academic staff arriving from Ukraine would be given full support and full access to our education system. Because it is our strong belief that continued access to education is essential for the future of Ukraine. We cannot allow Putin deprive the next generation of Ukrainian leaders of access to education. And we must and we will do everything within our power to help empower Ukrainians to shape a positive, collective future for themselves and for their country. Ukrainians are a proud people, and in my engagements with their embassy here and through the many, many hundreds that I've met right across the country, they are united in their determination to be able to return to and rebuild their homeland as soon as they are able to do so. And by opening our education system, by welcoming them into our system, we want to ensure that that generation has the capacity to rebuild Ukraine back stronger. And through this, we remember the words of Nelson Mandela, because whilst others can fire bombs and rockets and everything else, let's remember Mandela's words. Education is the most powerful weapon with which you can change the world. Through our efforts with universities and colleges across this country, we've enrolled around 500 displaced Ukrainian students into higher education. And we've also enrolled around 15,000 Ukrainian people in further education and training courses right across Ireland. We facilitated over 350 Ukrainian students to sit the equivalent of their Leaving Cert exam here in Ireland, ensuring that they can continue to plan for their future. And we've welcomed researchers from Ukraine to continue their work here in Ireland as well. I must say it is so heartening to see so many students here today and so many students watching in right across Ireland. I think this really says an awful lot about the engagement of students in relation to this war. In addition to those gathered today, these satellite events right across Ireland are providing an opportunity for people to observe the address by President Zelensky and participate in this important and historic day. To all of you, though, I say, you're not only standing in solidarity with Ukrainian classmates, you're also standing up for the shared values that we all hold so dear: democracy, peace, rule of law, and freedom from persecution and tyranny. I know that many people are here today because they have a strong affinity with the people of Ukraine. Many of you are students of history and politics, and today's event is indeed action on both fronts. It's politics and history in action, because our demonstration of our sheer outrage at the plight of the Ukrainian people and the rejection of Putin's war matters. When history is written, let it be clear that we stood up and we spoke out and we supported Ukraine. By joining the international condemnation of war, we're sending a signal, not only to the people of Ukraine, but to Putin and others who would act like him, that violence, brutality, and war will not be tolerated, and that democracy, freedom, will always win through. Gerav Mila Mahagov, Slava Ukraine.
I've been visiting Ukraine for 2 decades and given lectures throughout the country, in Kiev, in Yalta, Dnipro, Odessa, Kharkiv, and Donetsk. During that time, I've grown to love the country and its people, which is why this has been such a traumatic year for me. Since February, Russia has destroyed more than 2,000 educational institutions in Ukraine. In March, I saw the flames of the National University in Kharkiv. Millions of students of all ages have been displaced. The University of Donetsk, where I also lectured, had to relocate to Mariupol in 2014 during the first Russian invasion. I shudder to think of the horrors that may have befallen the students and faculty there. During the last century or so, Ukraine's history has been marked by civil conflict, world wars, tyranny, gulags, and famine. And yet somehow, miraculously, Ukraine has come out at the other end. Little wonder that the national anthem proclaims defiantly that Ukraine is not dead yet. Today, while the Kremlin kills for empire, Ukrainians are fighting for their families, their communities, and their futures. The issues at stake are not confined to Ukraine. They are central to the future of Europe. This war is not only, or even primarily, a military one. It is a clash in Europe between two ways of organizing society: democracy and dictatorship. We have been at this crossroads before, and there is only one path Europe and Ukraine can take. Accordingly, this is not just Ukraine's war. It is our struggle too. Ukrainians are not fighting only for their freedom, they are fighting for their survival. Ukrainians know that when Ukraine wins, there will be no war, but that if Ukraine loses, there will be no Ukraine. It is therefore not a matter of whether Ukraine can win. Ukraine must win, for all our sakes. I now want to talk about the man we will meet in a few moments. In this modern-day David and Goliath struggle, President Zelensky has rallied his nation and the world. He has given voice to Ukrainian defiance of Russian aggression. He has, by example, united and inspired by his words and by his deeds. In moments of profound darkness, he has provided leadership, courage, and inspiration. Most importantly of all, perhaps, he has given us hope. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce to you the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He speaks to us now from what is the front line of freedom and democracy in Europe. Mr. President, we welcome you. We appreciate so very much you taking the time to meet with us today. Dziękuję.
Thank you. Dear friends, Mr. Minister, President, And dear students, I'm very glad to welcome you. And as I was preparing for this meeting, I learned that just recently Russia has imposed sanctions against 52 politicians of your country. Now, the reason, because your country supports European efforts to stop Russian terror and to revive the international law. Of course, those restrictions imposed by Russia, they don't really affect anything. It's more of a propaganda thing so that Russian TV could pretend as if Russia is still capable of something, at least in diplomacy. But when I saw this message about 52 politicians, I remembered another number, another 52. It also just recent, and it's also related to sanctions. You know that the summit of economically powerful countries had just held in Indonesia. Well, the participants of this summit have agreed on a joint declaration made of 52 points. They're fairly meaningful, I would say, covering many of the existing global problems. Well, formally, the declaration was supported by Russia, but in reality, it violates most of the things mentioned in the declaration. Besides, some of the most vital global problems that G20 intends, or rather declares to solve, they were deliberately created by Russia. So should you carefully read all 52 points or paragraphs of the Bali Declaration, one can well see why the international pressure on Russia, and more specifically the sanctions pressure, should not only be maintained but strengthened. Russia continues to destroy international relations and human lives and pretends that it is fighting against the destabilization together with everyone else. Here is an extract from paragraph 4 of the declaration. It's important to uphold international law and the multilateral system that guarantees peace and stability. Well, today's era must not be an era of war. Now, and this is when Russia has mobilized all of its resources to not only turn our time into a time of war, but to become the largest terrorist state in the history. Now, paragraph 5 of the declaration, Russia says that it will allegedly work with others to promote energy and market stability. And at the same time, while the summit in Indonesia was still in progress, Russia launches a missile attack against our country, almost 100 missiles, against the energy sector. The next day, there was another missile attack, not only against power plants, but also against gas production facilities. So this is the Russian way of energy stability. Then there is paragraph 13 of the Bali Declaration. That's all about countering climate changes. Russia allegedly confirms the protection of the environment, but it has already destroyed almost 3 million hectares of forests in our country as the result of aggression. They're simply burned by shelling. And this is just one of thousands of Russian crimes against the environment. Then we have paragraph 22 of the declaration. It says, countries will make every effort to ensure timely access to vaccines, therapeutic and diagnostic products. In fact, hundreds of hospitals were destroyed by Russian shelling. Most of the territory occupied by Russia, there's no access to medicine at all. Not even to the simplest medicines, not to surgery, not to insulin. And this is Europe. That's 2022. Now, it's all the same for the rest of 52 paragraphs of the Bali Declaration. Just read this, and you see how much Russia is drowned in its own lies and makes it the biggest threat to the world. Let me give you one more example. Paragraph 44. Now, it says, access to education is a human right and a key tool for inclusive and sustainable economic recovery. Do you know how many educational institutions in Ukraine were destroyed by the Russians over 9 months of war? 2,719 were shelled, and 332 were completely destroyed, leveled to the ground. I mean, universities, schools. Now, dear friends, Russian aggression does not stop for a single day, just as Russian lies to the world do not stop for a single day. Therefore, international pressure on Russia should not stop for a single day. And this can be done not only by politicians, but also by everyone at their own level. Of course, we need to apply new sanctions against Russia. It's effective. We need a new European sanctions package. Please defend this need at the European level. We need to be active in spreading the truth about the war and the crises it provoked. Now, this is something that all of you can do. Please talk about what is happening and find a convenient format to support these honest and transparent media bloggers who cover global affairs, as well as Russian aggression in particular. And please look for specific projects that can help our defense and our people. The more collective efforts we make, the sooner we will force Russia to leave the territory of Ukraine and fulfill its obligations to the world. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for the support. Thank you, Ireland. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now take some questions from our students here.
Yes, hello, Mr. President, and thank you for your time today. My question is, how has the invasion impacted universities in Ukraine in terms of the ways it plays out on campuses and the manner in which faculty and students have responded and supported their communities?
Thank you for your question. Well, it's a simple, it's understandable question, but the answer would be difficult because the consequences of war are always difficult. Now, what was the response of the students? Let me start by answering the second part of the questions. Well, students are great guys because this is the age of courage, energetic people, and I think the majority of the students, they wanted to become mobilized. You know, we had lines in the drafting stations. It's not like in Russia when they're forcibly mobilizing their people and the students are running away because they don't know what they're fighting for, what they're dying for. Now, in Ukraine, it was absolutely different. The people wanted to join. There were lines of young people, students, who wanted to go and protect their nation, their fatherland. Now, that was the response. Just the same was in the informational environment. I mean, the students, they know how to use different social networks much better than elderly people, which is fairly understandable. So they spread the information from taking this information from Ukrainian sources. They were recording the consequences of the war, spreading the word around the globe. Now, speaking on these destructions caused by the war, well, unfortunately, many of the people don't have access to universities, and there are still the occupied territories, and students were leaving the occupied areas to those territories which are under control of the Ukrainian government. And surely that meant the change of the society, and some of the children lost their kind of an inner circle of friends among students, which tends to have an influence. And you know that we're all ready to online education. And I mean, we're the country who passed the COVID just as you. Believe me, we had high level of online education, but still, you know, online education, with all due respect, it cannot replace this, well, the atmosphere, the educational atmosphere that you have, the atmosphere of your social sort of circle, the conversations among the students when you do the education, when you receive this knowledge from your professors offline, when you have a chance to talk, when you have a chance to argue or to debate with the professors, when you can greet one another before that's important, really. And those things were lost. But that's temporarily, because I know when we will restore our territorial integrity, everything will be returned. And surely you've heard my statement that thousands of educational institutions were either shelled or destroyed, and there are very severe consequences. You know, even the walls can be recovered or rebuilt, but there are even graver consequences because there are some of the lives that were lost. Now, that is the most horrible thing that might have happened to this young generation. I mean, students, when you're a student, you just start starting to leave. That's why any lives lost, that's a great loss for our country as well as for the future.
Hello, President Zelensky. My question is, how is the Ukrainian government engaging the international community, especially African countries, in its efforts to win global support and solidarity with the people of Ukraine? Thank you.
I thank you for this question. That's, you know, one of the key objectives for Ukraine and for me as the president and for our government is to unite the whole world in exerting the pressure upon Russia for it to stop this war, and also on uniting the whole world. Well, in addition to the sanctions pressure and diplomatic pressure, there should be a whole world united in support of Ukraine. It's important also to have a support in the United Nations, because it's a political and diplomatic support, a support in voting and supporting the resolutions. Now, this is where, for us, it's crucially important to have the support of the African countries. And frankly speaking, we don't have really a developed relations between Ukraine and the African countries before the war. And Russia's impact and influence on African countries is greater than the one of Ukrainian, but still we are demonstrating one country after another, like gradually. All the African countries, they starting to realize what has actually happened, that there was a significant disinformation that Russia is the one who's aggressor, that it never returns freedom to anyone, it's not supporting the life, but in fact doing the other one. And there are some of the African countries that support us, and we can see that based on the votes in support of the resolution. We had a record support to the resolution, more than 140 countries who supported this resolution against the Russian aggression, and there were African countries who supported this resolution as well. We've organized this Crimean platform. That's the diplomatic platform for deoccupation of the Crimean Peninsula of Crimea. And there was the support from the African countries. For the first time, some of the African countries voiced their support. So step by step, we're doing that. And it started to happen, I think, when African countries saw when Russia has blocked the Black Sea, and it blocked the supply of grain, of wheat, corn, coming from Ukraine to the African countries, and particularly to those countries which may be facing the famine. And when countries started to see that, when their society starting to see that, when they started to feel that, now that's where they started to open their eyes. But frankly speaking, until now, there are some countries to which we've sent the ships carrying grain, so we actually support those countries, we help them. We, developed a corridor in the Black Sea. We've deblocked a part of the Black Sea together with United Nations organizations. We've done that. And we've sent the ships carrying wheat to some countries, and these African countries, they can't see that on the political level, on the level of leaders. So it's a very complicated, I would say, and a very significant impact of Russian disinformation on the African continent. So really, it took place over the last 3 decades.
Hello, Mr. President. My question is, how are you dealing with the psychological pressure at the moment? Thank you.
Абсолютно нормально.
Perfectly normal. It's not a pressure for me. I'm a calm person, tranquil. Well, not every day, surely. My team knows, because there's different days, different moments, that's frankly speaking. But the challenges to our country and to our people, as Professor has already mentioned, I think that was a professor of law and history. He said that, yes, that's the country, that's the people. We survived many challenges in our history, and some challenges are 10 years old, some challenges are 100 years old. So we are fighting for independence. So let the Russia think, how do they cope with the psychological pressure and many other pressures being exerted upon them.
Hello, Mr. President. It is often said that social media is a new frontier of war. Have you found this to be the case?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree. Fully agree with you. Well, that's kind of a new front line in a battlefield. It's full of capabilities, and unfortunately, Russia has been using that. And that's absolutely true. I've already mentioned about this recently. They've spread the disinformation among many African and Asian countries that had powerful impact on Israel, on Germany, and many other European countries. And their TV channels with disinformation have, until recently, worked in the United States and many other countries of the world, spreading this narrative. And it's hard to overcome this narrative because, only the bad information sticks, but anything positive, it's hard to spread any positive information in the world. So for the truth to be spread, it's very difficult. It's hard to overcome the false information, the lie information, and it's a component of this informational warfare. We were powerful in the beginning of the war. We realized that we cannot, argue with Russia only with weapons on the battlefield because they have more of those weapons. But in the informational domain, we knew that if we would be able to penetrate this wall, to penetrate this informational lies, if we would be able to overcome this. Now, in that case, we would be able to unite the whole world. And I believe that we did very well. And this is not over yet, but still, people can hear us. And the information that we have is becoming a weapon and becoming a powerful weapon. So if Russia had more weapons on the battlefield, but in the informational domain, we've managed to kind of win over them and unite the whole world. And I'm grateful to the whole world and our team that worked in the informational domain. Because, so, as I've told you, that's a sort of a battlefield and its capabilities. And we've been using that as capabilities, Russia as battlefield.
Hello, Mr. President. My question for you today is, did you ever think that Russia would launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine? Thank you.
Скажу вам відверто, що
Well, frankly speaking, back in 2014 or after 2014, we all changed our attitude step by step, gradually. And some said, well, I thought so. Someone would say that I was convinced that Russia would never, well, think of even of aggression against Ukraine. Well, not even, open any far against Ukraine. And that's why many people were surprised. Many people were even shocked. And then it happened that at a certain moment of time, even before the full-scale invasion, there was this feeling that it's a matter of time, really, that sooner or later they're preparing their own society. And once again, it's all about information. So that's true, that's the challenges of the modern days. And they were preparing their own society for their tyranny, for this idea of having Ukraine occupied, destroying the Ukrainian identity, people, language, flag, everything. I mean, so that there would be no country of Ukraine and no Ukrainian independence. And they were preparing information of their own society for many years. And when they found that they've already prepared their population, their society, they started this occupation. So occupation starts with, with occupying the brains of their own society. They started that informationally, and when they did this, they started issuing passports, and they had this for many years in the Crimean Peninsula, and then gradually they did so, and then step by step, institutionally, they had more and more impact on Ukraine. They had more political influence on the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, and only after that, having prepared all the prerequisites, they started this occupation.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was inspiring, and we're delighted and privileged and indeed humbled that you took the time during this war to speak with us directly today. Dziękuję.
And I thank you. I thank you for this opportunity, for this incredible warmth that you gave to our people, 63,000 of Ukrainians. That's a lot of Ukrainian youth, students, schoolers, our citizens, the citizens of Ukraine. And I'm grateful to you. You've raised many interesting and important aspects. Mr. Minister have mentioned really important things. And I was really happy to hear them. And our citizens of Ukraine will also be able to hear your respect to Ukraine, to our citizens. Many of you have been to Ukraine in the past. And I can tell you, select any time, and you know that you and your government and your society have helped Ukraine in many ways. And as you've absolutely truly mentioned, that no matter the neutral station, your neutral status, you're absolutely not neutral in your attitude, in your assistance. So come and join Ukraine, come and join the rebuilding process for Ukraine, or just simply come to see at a country which is fighting for us, for our nation, as you rightly mentioned this, for the country which is fighting for you as well. So thank you. Good luck. Take care. Take care of your freedom, and glory to Ukraine.
Now, I still really can't believe that what has happened has already happened. I mean, it's indescribable, as you know, reading the news every day, what's happening in Ukraine. 10 million people are without electricity and power as they enter the winter. And the fact that the President of Ukraine took the time today to meet with us, I think is extraordinary and remarkable. And I think it's a day we'll never forget. And it is a historic day, I think, in the annals even of Ireland's relationship with Ukraine. I would like to now invite the Ambassador of Ukraine to Ireland, Larissa Harasko, to address us. Ambassador Harasko has had to undertake a task that no person should have to, defending her country abroad while it suffers daily from a brutal invasion. So, Your Excellency, I'd like to now invite you to come here and speak.
It is very difficult to speak after the President. Distinguished Minister Harris, President Koch, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored for this opportunity to speak to all of you today. At the outset, I would like to thank the team of the Department of Higher and Further Education, DCU, and other universities for making today's event happen. I know how much work and effort has been put into organizing everything. Thank you so much. Dear friends, I am thrilled that so many of you are interested in the situation around Ukraine and its fight against Russia for our independence, our freedom, our sovereignty, our existence, for security in Europe and democratic values. Being unable to win on the battlefield, Russia turns to terrorism and tries to turn the cold into weapons against millions of Ukrainians. Every week, Russia targets, as our President mentioned, civilian objects, blows up our power plants, transformers, and electricity supply lines. About 30% of our energy infrastructure was destroyed by strikes of Russian missiles and Iranian drones used by occupiers. Nearly 10 million Ukrainians are left without electricity, without heating and communication, just imagine. And the winter in Ukraine, it's really cold winter. But as it targets Ukraine with missiles, it also wages a war of disinformation and misinformation against democratic countries, not only against Ukraine. We know for a fact that Russia cannot be trusted. Therefore, propaganda became a key part of its communication with the world. It goes above and beyond with its sophisticated techniques to undermine the efforts of Ukraine and our partners. In addition, it twists the facts, creates fakes, and uses opinion leaders to hide the truth and break the unity of the collective West. Unity that has already been proven to be one of the crucial elements of our common fight against the evil that Russia brings. It even has the nerve to attempt to punish those who openly defend international law, rule of law, and democracy and support Ukraine. As our president mentioned, the recent decision to ban 52 Irish politicians from entering Russia is yet another demonstration of such blatant conduct. I would like to repeat myself. Ukraine and Ukrainians are fighting not only for our freedom and a peaceful future. We fight for the freedom and peace of everyone in Europe. We fight for your future. Ireland has significantly contributed to Ukraine's ability to stand firm in face of Russian aggression. And we want this friendship and collaboration only to grow. You, the students, are the ones who will be shaping the future of this country, future of Europe and the whole world. That is why I urge everyone of you to question everything and to do your best to withstand Russian propaganda. I know that you all value democracy, freedom, international law, and human rights, the rights that Russia is trying to take away from Ukrainians and from you. Don't let evil change this in you. Keep supporting the good things, keep supporting the right things. Be on the side of truth. Gurav Mahakbud, Slava Ukraini, and glory to our defenders. Thank you.
The world has been in awe of Ukrainians' heroic defense of their homeland. But Ukraine needs allies who will help them preserve their freedom. We can all acknowledge with pride that Ireland is such an ally. However, Vladimir Putin's biggest potential weapon is our indifference. The longer Russia's war continues, the greater the risk of apathy, that too many atrocities will make a stone of the heart. So we have to stay the course. If we can show a fraction of the determination, the courage, and the heroism that the Ukrainian people have shown during these last 9 months, Ukraine will prevail, as it must. Thank you for coming here today and for your interest in the fate of Ukraine. Slava Ukraina, glory to Ukraine.
Thank you.